Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into emotional resilience.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
We asked you all to send in some lectures and presentations you found interesting, and this one on emotional resilience really stood out.
Yeah, it's packed with insights about how to bounce back from tough times. And you know what else I found fascinating?
What's that?
It turns out resilient people aren't like emotionless robots.
That's interesting. I always kind of pictured them that way a little bit.
Me too. But they actually feel things very deeply, but they just have a different way of processing all those emotions.
That makes sense. So, like, they're not suppressing or ignoring their feelings, they're just handling them differently.
Exactly.
I like that. So, before we get too far, how does the lecture actually define emotional resilience?
Well, it defines it as the ability to bounce back from stress adversity, even trauma.
But it's got to be more than just bouncing back, right?
Right. It's more about maintaining your well-being and like emotional balance, even when things get really tough.
So, like, weathering the storm?
Yeah, exactly. And the lecture highlights some key ingredients in this process.
Okay, like what?
Self-awareness,
Okay.
optimism,
Uh-huh.
managing your emotions, which is huge,
For sure.
having a good support system, and being adaptable.
So it's like a multifaceted thing?
It really is. And, one of the most interesting points the lecture made was about how resilient people actually experience emotions differently.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that earlier. So tell me more about that. How do they experience things differently?
Well, they don't ignore or suppress their negative emotions. They actually feel them, but they just have different ways of processing them. It's like they have this mental toolkit for managing those feelings so they can recover faster.
I love that analogy of a mental toolkit. It's like having an emotional first aid kit.
Exactly.
So where does the brain fit into all of this?
Well, the lecture goes into the whole neuroscience of resilience,
Cool.
and it highlights the roles of two key brain regions,
Mm-hmm.
the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, I've heard of those, but remind me what they do again.
So the amygdala, you can think of that as your brain's alarm system. It reacts to stress and triggers strong emotions like fear or anxiety.
Okay, got it.
And then you have the prefrontal cortex, which is like the control center. It helps you make decisions, regulate your emotions, and think things through.
So is it like having a direct line between the alarm system and the control center?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And the lecture says that people who are more resilient often have stronger connections between those two areas,
Yep. Okay.
which means they're able to manage intense feelings more effectively.
So wait, does that mean we're not just stuck with whatever brain wiring we're born with?
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because of neuroplasticity, that's the brain's ability to change. You can actually train your brain to become more resilient.
So it's like building mental muscle, except it's for handling stress.
You got it.
I like that. So how do we do that?
Well, the lecture mentions mindfulness practices like meditation as one way to strengthen those neural pathways between the emotional and rational parts of your brain.
So the more you practice, the better you get at managing your responses to stress.
Exactly. It's like anything else, the more you practice, the better you become.
Makes sense. Now let's address some common myths about resilience. One that I hear all the time is that resilient people are emotionless robots.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. But like we've been talking about, resilient people actually experience the full range of human emotions.
They do.
Maybe even more intensely in some cases. It's not about being emotionless. It's about having healthy coping mechanisms.
So it's not about denying your emotions, it's about knowing how to navigate them.
Exactly. They acknowledge those feelings,
Okay.
they process them, and they move forward. They don't get stuck in negativity.
That makes a lot of sense. And another myth I often hear is that resilience means going it alone, toughing it out. Like, you just got to be strong and deal with it on your own.
Yeah. But the lecture says that's totally a myth. Seeking support is actually a sign of strength, not weakness.
I like that.
Resilient people recognize that they don't have to face challenges alone. They know when to rely on their network of friends, family, or even professionals.
That makes sense. Having a support system can make a world of difference.
It really can. And this leads us to some of the nuances surrounding resilience, like the idea of toxic positivity.
Oh, yeah. You mean that pressure to always be positive even when you're going through something really tough?
Exactly. And the lecture actually warns that this can be harmful
How so?
because it dismisses genuine emotions. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a deep wound.
So you're saying authenticity and vulnerability are actually important aspects of resilience, too.
Exactly. True resilience comes from acknowledging and processing those feelings, not pretending they don't exist.
That's a good point. And that's especially important when you consider the societal pressures, especially for men to always appear strong and stoic.
Oh, absolutely. Those expectations can prevent people from seeking help when they need it most.
So we need more sensitivity and understanding around what resilience looks like for different people.
Totally. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, creating a space where people feel safe expressing their emotions and seeking support without judgment is crucial.
I completely agree. So we've explored the definition of emotional resilience, the brain science behind it, and even busted some common myths. We've learned that it's not about being emotionless or going it alone, but rather about developing healthy coping mechanisms and seeking support when needed. So, what's next on our deep dive into emotional resilience?
Well, now that we have a better understanding of what emotional resilience is, let's explore some practical strategies for building it. And the lecture gives us a ton of actionable tools that we can unpack.
All right, so we've laid some great groundwork for understanding emotional resilience, what it is, what it isn't, and that fascinating role our brains play in it all. But now let's get practical. What are some specific tools that the lecture offers for building this superpower of emotional resilience?
One of the most powerful tools the lecture emphasizes is self-compassion.
Okay.
You know, it's so easy to be hard on ourselves, especially when we're facing setbacks.
Yeah, totally. It's like we have this inner critic that just loves to pile on the negativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But self-compassion, that's about being kinder to ourselves, right?
Right. Treating yourself with the same understanding and kindness you would offer a close friend.
Exactly. You recognize your struggles and imperfections without judgment. Understanding that everyone makes mistakes and setbacks are just part of the journey.
So instead of beating yourself up, you offer yourself support and encouragement.
Exactly. And the lecture suggests that we should actually incorporate practices that nurture self-compassion and resilience into our daily routine.
Oh, so like a resilience routine?
I love that.
What would that look like?
Well, you can think of it as like a personalized toolkit.
Maybe it's starting your day with a few minutes of mindfulness meditation or journaling just to center yourself.
Uh-huh.
Or perhaps it's like calmly connecting with a loved one every day, sharing your experiences and offering support to each other.
I could see how those small, consistent actions could really make a difference over time.
They absolutely do. It's about weaving those resilience boosting practices into the fabric of your day.
I like that. Okay, so the lecture also talks about embracing setbacks as part of the journey,
Yes,
which I think is so important because it's so easy to get discouraged when things don't go our way.
it is.
But the idea here is to actually view those experiences as opportunities for learning and growth.
Yeah, that's such a crucial shift in perspective.
Mhm.
Instead of seeing a setback as a failure, try to view it as valuable feedback.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust my approach moving forward?
Yeah, it's like that saying, every experience, good or bad, is a lesson.
Right.
But honestly, it's not always easy to see those lessons when you're right in the middle of a challenge. But that's where self-compassion comes in again. You acknowledge the difficulty, you allow yourself to feel the disappointment or the frustration,
Mm-hmm.
and then with a compassionate lens, you start to look for those little nuggets of wisdom.
I'm sensing a theme here, acknowledging and processing our emotions instead of suppressing them.
That's a key thread that runs throughout the entire lecture. It's about developing that emotional literacy, that ability to understand and manage your emotions effectively.
And that includes knowing when to seek professional help, right?
Absolutely.
The lecture normalizes therapy as a valuable resource for building resilience.
Yes, just like we might seek physical therapy to heal and strengthen our bodies after an injury. You know, Therapy provides a safe space to process emotions, develop coping strategies, and gain a fresh perspective on challenges.
It's about recognizing that seeking support is a sign of strength and a smart investment in your well-being.
I love that.
Okay, so the lecture wraps up this whole section by highlighting the balance between action and reflection.
Yes, it's about taking proactive steps to navigate challenges while also making time to process your experiences.
So it's not just about doing, doing, doing. It's also about taking those pauses to reflect, learn, and integrate those experiences.
Exactly. It's in those moments of reflection that we make sense of what we've been through and allow those experiences to shape our resilience.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
Mm.
Self-compassion, building a resilience routine, embracing setbacks, seeking support, and finding that balance between action and reflection.
We have.
What's the overarching message here when it comes to building emotional resilience?
Well, I think the lecture really drives home the point that building emotional resilience is an ongoing process. It's not a destination you arrive at. you know.
Right.
It's a journey of learning, growth, and self-discovery.
Okay, so we're back for our final segment of this deep dive into emotional
This
resilience.
has been a good one.
We've really explored a lot, the definition, the science, those common myths, and of course, all those practical strategies for cultivating resilience. But before we wrap things up, are there any lingering questions or misconceptions about resilience that we should address?
Yeah, one that I hear a lot is that resilience equals being stoic or unemotional.
Uh-huh.
But as we've talked about, it's actually about embracing that full range of human emotions.
Right, so it's not about suppressing those difficult feelings.
Not at all. It's about acknowledging and processing them in a healthy way, allowing yourself to feel the sadness, the anger, the frustration, and then, moving forward.
So it's like feeling it, but not getting stuck there.
Yeah, resilient people don't get stuck in those emotions. They learn from them.
I like that. And another misconception, and I'll admit I've totally fallen into this trap myself, is that resilience is like a fixed trait, you know?
Yeah,
You either have it or you don't.
that's a really common one.
Yeah.
But the lecture reminds us that resilience is a skill.
Okay.
It's a muscle that you can develop over time with practice and, the right tools.
And speaking of tools, we've covered some really great ones during this deep dive, Self-compassion, mindfulness, building a resilience routine, embracing setbacks, seeking support when you need it.
Right? There's a whole toolkit.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's good stuff. So for our listener who's ready to start building their own resilience, what are some final actionable tips that you would suggest based on the lecture?
Well, I think first and foremost, practice self-compassion.
Okay.
Be kind to yourself, especially when you're struggling.
Hmm.
Remember that setbacks are a natural part of life. They don't define you.
It's so easy to get caught up in that self-criticism, but you're right. Offering yourself kindness and understanding can make a world of difference.
It really can. And along with self-compassion, cultivate a growth mindset. View challenges as opportunities for learning and development. See setbacks as stepping stones, not roadblocks.
So instead of asking, why me, ask, what can I learn from this?
Exactly. And don't forget the importance of those social connections. Reach out to loved ones, spend time with friends, engage in activities that bring you joy and connect you with others.
Yeah, those connections really are lifelines, especially when we're going through tough times.
They remind us that we're not alone and that we have people we can rely on for support. And finally, prioritize your physical well-being.
Oh, that's a good one.
Regular exercise,
Hmm.
a balanced diet, enough sleep. These things have a profound impact on your mental and emotional resilience.
That's so true. It's all connected, isn't it? Taking care of our physical health supports our mental and emotional health, and that in turn builds resilience. Wow, this has been such an insightful exploration.
It has.
We've delved into the science, we've debunked those myths, explored those practical strategies, and hopefully inspired our listener to embrace this incredible journey of building their own resilience.
And remember, resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about learning to bend without breaking. It's about adapting, growing, and emerging from challenges stronger and wiser.